So some of the items are starting to trickle out of the new Western Reaches Shadowdorks Kickstarter campaign. Let's take a look at one of the new character classes, and I'll give you my reaction to it. We're taking a look at the Paladin class here today. Now, this particular build is a part of the playtest, and some of the abilities will likely change once we get closer to full release. A little context, I'm more partial to the way Paladins were when I was young, and where they were bound to a particular alignment play. I know over time that has been significantly diluted in mainline D&D. Let's see what's in line for this one. Steel-clad paragons of knighthood who exemplify its highest ideals. They embody honor, duty, and courage. When I look at this, right, you want to kind of compare each of these expansion classes with the 4 core ones from the core rulebook. And because, you know, the game is essentially designed primarily around those 4 core classes. And, you know, you don't necessarily at your table have to include all of the expansion classes that show up in the Cursed Scroll zines or other third-party content. My question when I look at this, would I want to play a Paladin as opposed to, like, let's say, the fighter class? What can the Paladin do that necessarily the fighter can't, or does it do something, you know, more interesting? What are the trade-offs in play? One of the advantages of the fighter is they just have no restrictions whatsoever on weapons and armor. If it's on the list, they can use it. They pick up something in the field, I can use it, right? There's no restrictions there. So that's very nice. Have the most versatility when it comes to arms and armor. Now with the Paladin, all armor and shields are on the table, so that's a wash. In terms of the weapons, we can see Bastard Sword, Dagger, Greatsword, Javelin, Lance, Longsword, Shortsword. So we have a preference definitely towards swords in general. So you're sacrificing a lot of, like, any sort of range potential you might want to use. So we're taking off longbows, crossbows, short bows off the table. You can use javelins for that thrown mechanic, but largely, like, if you're gonna run a fighter, you could go that dex or that strength route. As a paladin, you're definitely going more that melee angle. We noticed Lance is not on the core rules weapons column. So we turn over to page 2 here, and we see lances are an additional item, have a bunch of new properties. So the lance has some significant limitations, right? Mainly, you can only use it while mounted. You've got 3 slots in terms of your gear slots being taken up by it. You have a movement component. You have to move at least 6 squares or near distance. You know, it's got an awesome, like, crit damage burst there, and then it's destroyed. So if you are outside of delving into tight cornered dungeons and caves and so on, you're doing some sort of environmental combat out in the, you know, a more open space, getting able to use that lance and that mount becomes more likely. It's more of a narrow component that's not going to happen in all situations. Like, you know, a tavern brawl, you're not gonna, you know, bust out on your charging mount, right? You are diving, you're splunking in caves. I mean, you're probably not gonna be. How are you gonna get your mount through the through the cave diving, right? But yeah, overland travel probably could get a lot more of that mounted combat in. Playing that hex crawl, going from here to there, yeah, I could see a lot more mount usage. So as far as HP goes, you have parity there. 1d8 for the Paladin, 1d8 for the Fighter. So Chivalric Oath, you swear to act with integrity, humility, and chivalry. You must give honor and mercy to the deserving. If you break this oath, you lose your inspiring presence and name-blade talents until completing a holy quest of great challenge. So these virtues definitely give you some flexibility on how you want to design your paladin's values and how they interpret, you know, carrying out this oath, but definitely gives you a map that is, you know, stirring you. I don't know how you spin this towards evil and chaos, and I support this. Inspiring presence, allies within near of you, so that's 30 feet, 6 squares on a grid. Allies within near of you rise from dying on a roll of 18 through 20 and regain HP equal to your charisma bonus, minimum 1. So normally dying, right? You have to roll a 20 to rise with 1 HP without, you know, someone intervening to try to stabilize you and, you know, remaining unconscious, right? You're bleeding out, if you will. So the Paladin significantly increases the odds going around the table multiple turns, let's say, and also gaining a few more HP there if you get up from the fight. So that's awesome. And then enemies within near of you lose immunity to morale checks. Now that's really interesting because there's a lot of like undead that just have straight up immunity to morale. For example, here we got the skeleton, undead immune to morale checks. So the priest class has the ability to like turn undead as a spell, really like, you know, send undead fleeing. I kind of like how this inspiring presence piece also gets like a shred of that and can influence undead to be afraid of you and flee. But also, again, this there's plenty of other creatures that have immunity to morale checks, and so that can pierce through that as well. So it that's pretty cool. So with the Paladin mount, you have a warhorse with a reliable demeanor and a +4 strength bonus, and it comes when you call. So I'm just imagining now like Witcher 3, and Geralt is, you know, whistling, and Roach, his horse, always comes, no matter where he is on the map, so that's kind of cool. That's probably how I would play it too, if I was a dungeon mastering. It's just like whistle, and then there's your horse. It doesn't magically show up there, it just happens to be coming out of the tree line. All right, you can see the horse stats here. So it's got 11 HP, can move double near, so that gives you something. But instead of instead of this +3, it gives you a +4. So the hooves have a slightly better chance to hit. So that's cool. So this named blade feature is probably the main reason why you're taking the Paladin. At first level, you gain a sword of your choice. It is a +0 magic weapon. However, it becomes a +1 weapon at level 3, +2 at 5, +3 at 9th level. So you have a scaling magic sword. If you lose this blade, you can find a new one by completing a holy quest of great challenge. So don't lose this blade, because your dungeon master is going to have some fun with you otherwise. So this is pretty cool. So like at the start of your character's career, you can choose sort of, hey, am I going to go sword and board and focus on like longsword and shield, one-handed, or am I going to want that versatility of a bastard sword, or am I going all in on damage with a great sword, and sort of choose, you know, which one are you going to focus on to have that scaling over time. And this is kind of comparable to the fighter's weapon mastery. You choose a weapon and you gain that +1 to attack and damage over time, but you know, it doesn't have the same level of scaling here in terms of raw output as the fighter. So you get one at the start, and then level 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So you're gonna end up with a +6 over the lifespan of the fighter, versus, you know, that magic weapon is gonna cap out at +3. Now there are advantages to having it magical because it overcomes certain monster resistances. On the talent table, the Paladin will unlock some additional benefits. So your name blade gains a random magic weapon benefit if you roll a 2, which is not easy. Gain +1 to attacks and damage with your name blade. Okay, so a very common outcome will be to increase the damage on that talent table. You have your stats, middle rung there. On the latter end, increasing that inspiring presence dying roll range, so again, more survivability with your party, and then choosing a talent or distributing stats as you see fit. Really cool though if you get that 2 or 12. If you roll 12, you can choose 2 and gain other random magic benefits. Let's take a look at what possibilities reside there. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting ones here. Cut and smash through any material, once per day, igniting for 5, so like flame blade there, shooting a bolt of energy, regen a d6 hit points, you have advantage on initiative. So your item can get some of that, some awesome extra random benefits, but you always will have at least that core +3/+3 over the course of the lifespan of the Paladin. So there's no magic spells here for the Paladin. I kind of like that. I think too many classes have magic in modern D&D. Moving away from everything being a spellcaster almost is really nice. Same thing with the Ranger as well. Ranger does not have spells. The Bard does not have spells, and now the Paladin does not have spells. Excellent. I can get behind this magical deflation. More exclusivity of magic Thank you. So overall, I think the Paladin can be a fun alternative to playing a fighter if you want that like aesthetic, if you want that challenge of living by and playing by a particular oath. I think that's pretty cool. But if you're just looking to deal raw damage, be your pack mule for your party, and also having the flexibility to be like a dex fighter and do ranged damage, you know, I still think a fighter class, you can't go wrong. All right, Shadowdorks, we'll see you next time.